Yo, what's going on, guys? This is Houston Sports Talk back in the video today. And today, South Florida pulls off another upset win. This one not as dominant as their last win against Boise State, but incredible for South Florida, a team who wasn't great last year. I believe it was 5-7 last season, and they were average and actually really struggled against ranked teams. Like, they were getting their butts kicked against ranked teams. Like, lost by, it was 30 or 25 to Alabama. They just had a lot of instances where they played ranked teams and got crushed last year. It was Alabama, and there were a couple other matchups they had last year facing ranked teams where they really struggled. All of the ranked matchups they had last year against ranked teams, they lost by 20+. This year so far, in their first two games, they faced two ranked teams and beat them by a combined 29 points. Beat Boise State by 27 last week when facing Boise, in week one, beat him 34-7. This one not as dominant, but here's a big difference. Last week they were, they were at home at Boise, or against Boise. This week they're playing a little bit of a better team because Boise State was ranked 25. Now they're playing a little bit of a better team, Florida, who's ranked number 13. And they're on the road. So that is a lot harder than playing Boise State. And they win by 2 points. There was, they had to fight in this game a little bit because, this game started off, it didn't seem great. It was Florida had a bunch of field goals and they were up 9-3. But, South Florida kept themselves in the ball game by playing good defense. And their offense had a couple good drives here and there to get them on the board, and they were able to get a win. I didn't watch much of this game, to be honest. I watched the ending of this game. I watched, I think, probably the last 5 or 6 minutes of this ball game. But I was keeping track of this ball game as it was going on. Looking, I have an app where I can see every play as it goes on. I was keeping track of it because I didn't think Florida was going to lose this game. But I sure as hell thought South Florida was going to put a good damn fight in after what I saw from them last week against Boise State. So I knew not to doubt them. But I didn't think they'd win this game, and they surprised me. Because that's something hard to do with their struggles last year. Last week, I'm not going to call what they did last week easy, but it was at home against Boise State, who's a lot easier than Florida. Florida, the Gators are not as good as they used to be, but they are they are a good team compared to South Florida, and not only that, but that's a tough environment as well. So credit to South Florida for going out there and winning this game today, and their quarterback Byrum was outstanding. So let's go to the scoring summary. It was mainly field goals in the first half. It was all field goals, and there were 5 of them. Florida knocked one in for 28 yards. Trey Smack knocked it in. Then Nico, the quarterback for the kicker for South Florida, made a 38-yard kick, and it was 3-3. Then Trey Smack made a 36-yard field goal, and it was 6-3 after that. Then Trey Smack made a 41-yard field goal to make it 9-3, and that's what I was talking about. South Florida was down 9-3, and luckily they got a field goal. Right at the end of half, they went on a 68-yard 2-minute drive, and as the digits went off to 3 zeros at the end of this first half, 25-yard field goal for South Florida to make it 6-9, and then we saw South Florida eventually get the lead back when Byrum Brown threw an unbelievable 66-yard touchdown pass to Keyshawn Singleton. And it was 13-9, but Florida took the lead back with a DJ Lagaway 4-yard touchdown pass to Eugene Wilson to make it 16-14, and that's when South Florida made the game-winning field goal from 20 yards to make it 18-16. And Florida, really, just being completely honest, South Florida didn't have many big plays on that last drive. It was penalties. So there was a 15-yard pass interference that costed Florida's defense on that drive, and I believe that was a third down if I'm not mistaken. And then there was also an unsportsmanlike conduct. A player on Florida's defense spat on another player of South Florida's offense. And that is a repeat of what we saw in the Dallas Cowboys Philadelphia Eagles game the other night. I wonder if that defensive player who did that was watching the Cowboys game Thursday night. But moving forward to some stats, I thought Byrum Brown was outstanding. I thought he was great last week, but then even better today because it's a tougher opponent. 23 for 36, 1 passing touchdown, 263 passing yards. DJ Lagaway, I'm not going to say he was good, but he wasn't terrible. I just felt like we need to do more. Him and this Florida offense need to do more to win this game. 222 passing yards, 23 for 33, 1 passing touchdown, and 1 pick. Byrum Brown, not only did he lead South Florida in passing yards, of course he would, but he led them in rushing yards as well with 17 carries for 66 rushing yards. He was basically doing it all for South Florida in this game. Singleton was the receiving yard leader. That seems kind of obvious since he had a 66-yard reception for a touchdown. Outside of that, he only had one other reception one reception for 9 yards outside of his one reception for 66 yards on the touchdown. Harris, a linebacker for them, led them in tackles and sacks as he had 1 sack and 10 tackles, and 4 of those were solo tackles. So that really recaps this game. I think South Florida is 100% going to stay in the top 25. I believe so. I think that's going to happen because they've now won 2 games in a row against top 25 opponents, and they were also receiving votes last week. They received 25 votes in last week's ranking, so now they get a win like this. They are 100% going to get in the top 25, which they've not done since 2018. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about this game? And peace out.